logistics of reaching that. So I didn't want to go back to the school. I had like students on top of that. It's just it's
Yeah.
so that's all those are there.
Come on, anything. Make it any
You small something goes wrong, it goes wrong.
But
Here we go.
So we're just speaking from our chairs. Is that what
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
And we're talking to.
This is the microphone, so we can move that closer.
So remember the order. I'll
Okay,
speak.
I'm gonna start recording now. So give me a couple of minutes and give me 1 minute and then we'll start. So give me one
Just
second.
give us a
Thank you.
Just give us a cue when you'd like us to start, Gabrielle.
Mhm. Okay, we're ready to go.
Well, welcome. Welcome from Australia, Brisbane, Queensland, Australia. And we're sitting in the offices of Independent Schools Queensland, right on the Brisbane River, as we can see out our window on a bit of a cloudy day. Usually it's sunny Queensland, but it's not that at the moment. Just like to introduce our participants today and the format that we're going to go. On my far right, we have Keely, who is from Faith Lutheran College in Plainlands, Gwen, who is Faith Lutheran College in Plainlands, both year 11. On my right here is Xavier, who is a year 9 student at Mansell College at Fig Tree Pocket. And on my left is Hamish, who is a year 8 student at Mansell College, Fig Tree Pocket. We have Dr. Paul Browning, the principal at St Paul's Bald Hills, at Bald Hills in Queensland. We have Lee from ISQ, and we have Dale, who's a teacher at Faith Lutheran Plainlands College. Welcome, and we're here to talk about the future of education and what that looks like. A very exciting time and very, very exciting when we can look at what does education really look like in the future? Are there any limits? Very, very different from what we would see having in a normal classroom where we have a teacher. Is it taught by avatars? Are we working from home remotely? Is there parts of schools? Are we having classes that might go across the entire globe and all link into one? What is the purpose of education? What really engages our students and what makes a difference to society of tomorrow? And what is the important things for society of tomorrow? All of those things we have to think about and realise, especially from a country where we are now in Australia. We're down the southern part of our country. We are getting hit by climate action as we speak. We have major flooding in Victoria, New South Wales, and this afternoon we'll have the challenges of very heavy downpours in Queensland, which could cause flooding up here as well. So these are the future. The people who are sitting around me right now are going to be part of the future. They're going to make a difference to society, and us as educators are ones that need to facilitate that and make it a lot of fun, challenging, and make that social difference. And it's very, very exciting to see where that's going to go. So today we're going to explore a bit of a format. Dr. Paul Browning is going to talk what future education means to him. He is the author of quite a few books as well as presentations at conferences, and is an expert or a real learner in this area, and a colleague for a very long time. And then we're going to invite each one of these wonderful students to share and a bit of a chat session on what does the future education look like to them, and how we can tease that out a little bit. And then from that, we're going to have then invite the rest of you from around the world to have some questions coming back, and we might be able to join in that discussion at the same time. So that'd be wonderful. So I'd like to hand over to Paul to say some words. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter, and good morning, everyone. I'm a bit apprehensive about speaking before the students because what I have to say, they might think it's not what we really want from an education. So I'm a little bit nervous about speaking first. I was hoping to respond to them and say, yes, I agree with you, or no, I don't. But anyway, so my name is Paul Browning. As Peter introduced me, I'm the headmaster at St Paul's School in Bald Hills, which is North Brisbane. St Paul's School, as a bit of context for you, is 62 years old. It started as a boys-only high school in 1960. It went co-ed in 1993, and we added a junior school and an international school in 1997. So today, we have some 1,300 students across the campus, and the campus is some 125 acres. It's a beautiful campus. And we have international students from all sorts of countries around the world who study with us, finish year 12, and then go on to study at university here in Brisbane or somewhere else in Australia. It's a beautiful place, and I'd like to tell you the story of what we've been doing there over the last 14 years, because we've been really challenged by this whole notion of what does an education worth having actually look like? What is the future of education? So if I go back and tell the story, and then perhaps at a later point, people might have some questions, and hopefully it resonates with you. And I'm probably speaking to the converted, because we all know that the current system of education is not fit for purpose. It's not really adequately preparing young people to thrive in the world that we know of today and what the world will look like when these young people actually graduate and look for jobs. So what's wrong with the current system of education? Again, you probably know the answers to that. But back in 2009, when I arrived at St Paul's School, I challenged the staff with the question, we talk about 21st century skills, but what do they actually look like? What does that actually mean? How are we embedding 21st century skills into the classroom? It was a provocation. And we also used the great video, the TED Talk by Sir Ken Robinson, who said or spoke about how schools kill creativity. And that was one of the 21st century skills that was being talked about at that time. How do schools kill creativity, and how do we reverse that? So we challenged the staff with that question, and we started looking for solutions of how we could actually change the way we delivered education. Then in 2014, we did a really exciting research project. We gathered 16 volunteer staff members. They joined a research team, and we did a 12-month research project. And we did what's called a scenario planning research project, where we were looking to build scenarios or look at possible futures in the year of 2028. Now, we chose the year 2028 because back in 2014, our younger students, that would be when they would graduate from year 12. So the question really was, what would the world look like in 2028 when those 4-year-old children would graduate from year 12? We used an acronym called RESPECTED. The acronym stands for religion, environments, social, political, technology, education. We were looking at all those different landscapes and areas. First of all, we did a huge amount of desk research, and then we interviewed experts in each of those areas. So leading thought leaders across the globe. So you might not be familiar with some of the names, but Saul Eastlake is a leading economist in Australia. We interviewed him. We interviewed Pasi Sahlberg, Yong Zhao, you might recall those names. Andy Hargraves from Harvard University heard about what we were doing and rang us up and said, could I join this project with you? It's really, really quite exciting. And what we were looking for when we actually interviewed those people and did the desk research was for trends that would impact on the education of a young person at St Paul's School. Trends like divorce or climate change or the economy, what was actually happening in government funding, etc., etc. In all, after that research, we found 72 trends that would impact on the education at St Paul's School. We then mapped those trends with the help of Professor Sahal Inala, who's a futurist at one of the universities in the area here, and we mapped them against 2 criteria. And what we were looking for was 2 critical uncertainties, 2 trends that we didn't know where they were going to go, what was going to happen with the trend. We couldn't predict it, and was going to have a huge impact on the education at St Paul's School, or indeed the education broadly. You probably won't be surprised, but one of the key trends we uncovered was the impact of artificial intelligence and technology. Scary things arose out of that research. We discovered research where people had worked out a way, and Elon Musk has actually done it. If you YouTube it, to implant a chip into the brain, he's done it with pigs, where you can actually then download from the internet content directly into the neocortex. Some military are actually been doing this anyway. So really, it led to the question, well, if you can deliver content directly to your neocortex, or you have it in your phone anyway, what is the point of teaching content? Do we actually need teachers in their current format? AI and technology then is also transforming the other critical uncertainty we uncovered, and that was employment. Jobs are changing at a rapid rate because of artificial intelligence and robotics. Many jobs are being broken down and farmed out on the internet in small parcels. Jobs are disappearing. Even medical jobs are being impacted. High-level jobs like lawyers or engineering are being impacted by artificial intelligence and robotics. A lot of it is being automated. We've seen, I guess, some of the commentary that's happening at the moment, and there's a great book called The Future by Al Gore, and that was published in 2013. And he basically says that we've entered a period of change like none other in human history. It's a change greater than the Industrial Revolution. And we know out of the Industrial Revolution, people left the farms and they came to the cities and then worked in factories, and that was the birth of the current education system. But this revolution means that our current education system is not fit for purpose, because AI essentially will be taking the jobs that our young people hope to attain when they leave school. We're educating young people for the wrong thing. So it left us with the question, what is an education worth having? Those two critical uncertainties enabled us to create 4 scenarios, or 4 possible futures of what the world could look like in 2028. They were actually quite frightening futures. One of them basically said Australia would not keep up with the rest of the world, and we would lag behind. Our economy would start failing, and our standard of living would go backwards because we weren't able to transform what we currently do to meet the needs of what the future actually looked like. And underpinning that is obviously how we educate the next generation of people to work in that economy. We then asked, as I said, what is an education worth having? And we created a vision of what schools should look like in 2028. And we've been on a journey to achieving that vision. We're now halfway through that 14-year plan. But one of the most exciting things that we've actually done that I'd like to share with you this morning is coming back to that notion that Sir Ken Robinson said, that schools kill creativity. All the indications are that the skills that AI cannot replicate are emotional intelligence skills and creative thinking. The new jobs that emerge for people need high levels of emotional intelligence and high levels of creative, innovative, and entrepreneurial thinking. And yet schools, in their current format, kill creativity. We condition it out of young people. And we all know how we do that, unintentionally, but students come to school at a young age, filled with ideas, brimming with imagination, and they very quickly learn what the teacher wants. And that's what they actually deliver. And I'm sure these young people here today would actually affirm the same thing. They probably would say, just tell me what I need to know to get an A on this assessment. And that's what I'll focus on and do. Creativity is conditioned out of young people, and yet that's the skill they need to have. So with that provocation back in 2009, we started really reflecting on how we delivered content in the classroom, because we have to teach the Australian curriculum. It's mandated to us. But the question is, well, how do we deliver it so we foster creative thinking skills? Again, we did a lot of research, we prototyped, we developed, and then we've rolled out what we call realms of thinking. Realms of thinking basically is a teaching and learning framework. It's a delivery system. Realms of thinking are a collection of 16 dispositions or skills that you need to be able to think creatively. Skills like empathy, the willingness to collaborate, the willingness to take risks and learn from failure, the willingness to deal with ambiguity, question posing, question answering. 16 dispositions like these are necessary for creative thinking. And when you cluster those dispositions together, you get ways of working, like design thinking or entrepreneurial thinking. So creative thinking underpins entrepreneurialism. We've then taken that and we've embedded that way of teaching into every classroom across the entire school, every curriculum area. So we're not just delivering content, but we're teaching the skills and dispositions necessary for creative thinking. We support teachers by giving them what's called a common learning framework. And a common learning framework is a planning document that leads them through a process to plan for learning, that asks questions of students at the end of the content learning is, what can I do with this? What new ideas can I generate? Those dispositions are on large magnets. So if we're teaching for a particular skill or disposition, we place it on the whiteboard so the students actually know what disposition we're looking for at the moment. So they're knowing the language and understanding what they're actually doing. We're finding it's having a huge impact on students' ability to ask really challenging questions, to think very differently, and to generate new ideas. The second part of Realms of Thinking is an appraisal tool that we've developed, and we call that certification. So because St Paul's School has now become a Realms of Thinking school, I say to the teaching staff, you need to be a certified Realms of Thinking teacher. You must teach in this way to be able to work here. That way I can control the quality of what's happening in every classroom. And when parents enroll at the school because of Realms of Thinking, they know it's going to be happening in every classroom. So teachers get feedback on their practice. We have 3 Realms coaches who support them with their planning, and then they grow their practice and get certified. And that certification is against what we call the Australian Professional Standards for Teaching as well. And embedded in that is the way of teaching we call Realms of Thinking. The last piece of work that we're doing at the moment is probably the most exciting piece of work. So we've engaged Melbourne University's Graduate School of Education, their Assessment Research Council, to do a piece of work with us. And what we're doing with them is to work out how do we assess and report on the development of these skills and dispositions. If we really value as a school creative thinking, why is it that we don't assess and report on it? It's that old adage, you assess what you value and measure what you value or report on what you value. So we really need to think hard about that. Parents have been coming to me and saying, how do I know that my child will be more creative in their thinking if I send them to your school? Great question. So over a 2-year period, Melbourne University is working with our staff to develop assessment rubrics for each of those 16 dispositions so that we can measure a child's development and then report on that on what we will call a learner profile. That work will be finished at the end of next year. We're currently trialling the assessment tools, and it really is a quite exciting piece of work. The final thing that we're actually doing, which is even more exciting, is we believe wholeheartedly in what we've actually done. We believe it's the future of education. We don't need to totally restructure schools to deliver a great education to enable young people to thrive in the future. We need to change the way we deliver education. We need to change how we teach. And Realms of Thinking changes teachers' mindsets and helps them to teach for creativity and provide the skills and dispositions that young people need to have to thrive in the future. So we've employed 4 software developers, and we're currently building Realms of Thinking onto a digital platform. So on that platform will be the Common Learning Framework, the planning tool, professional development opportunities for teachers to help them grow their practice, the appraisal and assessment tool, and the learner profile. And that way, schools who are interested in adopting this way of teaching can actually purchase licenses to adopt Realms of Thinking in their own school and transform the education of what's actually happening there. We're hoping to launch that product at the end of 2023. So January 2024, when Melbourne University's work is finished with us, we'll have a piece of software that schools can take and transform the learning in their classrooms. We're super excited about that. Can I finish by just making a couple of comments and responses to what Peter said at the beginning, or provocations? What will the future of education look like? COVID really accelerated the changes that we were looking at in 2028. It accelerated those changes. Schools responded and went online. And we all started thinking about, well, is this the future of education? Do we deliver education online? Do we link up with schools across the world to deliver content? And my response to that question now, as I reflect back, is no, we won't. We were caught up with that flurry of excitement and started designing online content and online programs. And at the end of the day, when we researched and asked our students when they came back to school after the lockdown, it was a resounding no. Because the reality is, schools are actually about relationships. They don't work well unless it's face-to-face, where we can get to know each individual child and they feel valued and important, valued by a community and connected to a community. An education worth having as we move into the future is not just about content delivery, not just about skills and dispositions, the ability to think creatively, but it's also about the development of character, emotional intelligence, and you cannot develop character unless you're in relationship with other people. So my view is schools are here to stay in the current format, but they will look different in the way that we deliver education. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Paul. Look, you cannot be more blessed than having someone like Paul who has done that research at school, at his school, delivered today. And we really thank you for those pieces of wisdom. And also we really look forward to seeing the realms in 2023. I'm sure many schools across the globe will be very interested after this session having a look at that. Each school is very different, and I totally agree with Paul that the character which builds in relationships dovetail within pedagogy and teaching styles and how you teach are very, very important. The school that the two fine gentlemen on either side of me come from, Mansell College, is a Language Disorder Australia school. So to be in our school, you have a language disorder, but we look at that as a strength base. So for us, it's about to be able to achieve whatever we would like to be able to achieve and be able to really take that into the future and make a big difference. We're the only school like that in Australia. And 1 in 10 young people in Australia in schools today have a language disorder. So there was a great need for quality education, futuristic education, on exactly what Paul is mentioning to actually be taking place. And we'll ask these gentlemen to say a couple of words in a moment. But we have also Keely and Gwen from Faith Lutheran College, Plainlands, which is out in, I wouldn't say rural setting, I suppose close to rural setting on the outside of Brisbane. So they've travelled a way in this morning to be able to be with us. And so what I'd like to do now is spend a little bit of time asking some questions of each of our 4 students to be able to do that, and the wisdom of what do they think the future will look like. And remember what Paul just said then. When you graduate, which for you, it's only in the end of next year, but what does the world look like in 10 years' time? It's going to be very, very different. So how does that look? And jobs will be very different. I know that at our school, we will be concentrating on great teaching excellence and curriculum and pedagogy, but equally on well-being and having that character base and the emotional and social skills so that we can be able to form relationships to build to make those changes in the world. And that's really very important. So who would like to go first? Any volunteers? Don't be too nervous.
I'll go.
Go for it, Keely. It's all yours.
So I was thinking about following up on that idea of being engaged, having that creativity in school, but still learning what you need to know so you're prepared for the after school life. And as a student, I do often find school very stressful and very confusing. And a lot of the time I wake up and I'm like, oh, 6 hours today, let's just try and get through it and do what I need to know. I had an idea of bringing more mature qualities into high schools. And this particularly relates to the senior students, the grade 11s and 12s. Bringing those things that you usually see in universities down into our high school. Something like a timetable change. And while I do agree, not all online, because that was awful in COVID.
Why was that awful, Keely? Why did you find it was awful?
I think just staying at home and a lack of motivation mainly, and not being able to get the help that you need as quickly as just asking a teacher or raising your hand or something like that. And all the internet troubles that we had, there was delays in technology and things like that.
Okay.
So I had an idea to kind of change the timetable a little bit, give the students a bit more freedom into how they run their school day, I guess. If you look at a university, they choose when they do their classes and what days and what time. And that might extend from the, 9 till 3 period that school is usually in. But being able to run classes in person as well as an option of online, I believe would benefit all students, whether they're going ATAR or doing a trade or just trying to get their certificate out of high school, especially with trades, like being able to choose, you can choose what day you actually go and do your work experience and things like that.
Now, I'll be right in knowing, because I know Mr. Braden, your principal, quite well,
Yeah,
that he's pretty forward thinking. Did you change your whole timetable? So there was a special day, is that Wednesday now, where
Wednesday.
there is no classes?
Yeah.
And would you like to talk a little bit about it?
That's our Wellbeing Wednesday at FAE. And that day is to focus on the wellbeing of students and really focus on building those relationships and making sure that you're okay mentally. Because as we stated before, school can be quite a stressful experience for everyone like that. So it's just a day to kind of chill off the schoolwork, and it gives you an opportunity to choose your projects that you'd like to do and things that you might like to exceed after high school. I know a lot of students do take that day also for their work experience as well.
Yeah, and so that's interesting, because people like Paul and myself and Janine have to go to certain compliance, I suppose, with our, what we call the Non-State Schools Accreditation Board, or a CAR, and curriculum timing, and there's all those challenges. And somehow you have fitted in still a different format, and obviously your school is catering with all of that, which is really special. So it can be done.
Yes, it can be. Like, as I said, that day has no curriculum classes on it, but on the Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, we do have the 6 periods a day.
Yeah.
So the 6 classes I do every day, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. So it can be quite challenging sometimes, I guess, to kind of skip that day in the week.
Yeah.
But it is very beneficial, I do believe.
Brilliant. Now, Hamish, you had a couple of ideas that you'd like to share,
Yeah.
which are very different, being a big year 8.
Yeah.
Go for it.
So if a student lives a far distance away from school, I believe that they can do their classwork at home. So then they can get their own work done, they can take their own pace, and they won't need to have all the stress that if they don't finish their work, that they'll get into trouble and stuff. And
Okay. And you were talking about also in the car, things that you'd like to be able to see in the future. That might be different. Do you want to share a couple of those and ideas you had? Talked about driving.
yeah, so like a driving course at school, so that you can
Learn how to drive, which is good. That's a really good idea. What else do you think that might be really important that you'd like to see in the future? We talked about sports and a whole range of different things.
So like with sport, you can like if you want to like learn a different sport, you can like have someone like a VR person training you,
Virtual reality.
virtual reality person teaching you sport.
Yep.
So that it can make it easier for you to get the
Skills.
to get the skills right, and you
Place the most.
yeah
Because I know when I put virtual reality goggles on, I know you guys might be different and probably tougher than I give it sick because I lose my balance and fall over. But I did try it and it's really good. But you think virtual reality in the goggles, we've got some of those at school which have come in to be able to try, and part of it, do you think that'll work for you?
I think that would work, not just for me, for other students as well. So they can just have one person just eye to eye with them.
Yes.
And then they can just focus on that
Yep.
without the like a group of people there.
Like a one-on-one training.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
one-on-one training for that person. If they can't understand something clearly, or they need, if they need it, or if they need it, if they have to explain it simple for them.
Yeah.
And then they will understand it and
Brilliant.
make it easier.
Would I say that might be cricket because you're doing the University of Queensland cricket program?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought so too. I knew where that was going from, which is just fantastic. Your favourite as well. Now I'm going to have Gwen. Have you got some ideas you'd like to share?
I only have maybe like one main idea that I've been quite passionate about for a few years, and that's removing exams in
Okay.
school.
Fantastic.
I believe exams can be quite stressful and quite overwhelming for a lot of students, and I believe it's not the right way to judge a student's academic abilities.
Yep.
Especially in such a stressful situation. I don't believe every student learns the same, nor can they prove their abilities the same way.
Very good.
And so I believe that removing exams and letting students be able to express their knowledge and their abilities in lots of different ways and areas is going to be a lot more beneficial. It'll also inspire more creativity among students, and I hope it will also inspire more participation.
So I'm going to ask you a question. I'm sure Paul and Janine and Dale And Lee, you're going to have a wry smile on it. What do you think of standardised testing like NAPLAN?
I personally did not like NAPLAN when I had to do it. It was very stressful, and I've talked to students this year who have also done students in the past, and they can all agree they don't see much of the point to it. They believe that it's not a good way for them to show how they learn and what they know, because they could easily do it if they were given time, or if they were given just a simple thing that could trigger that memory that helps them answer that question.
Okay.
Peter, can I interject?
Yeah,
Just
absolutely.
for our global audience,
Yes.
NAPLAN, you probably don't know what NAPLAN stands for, but National Assessment for Literacy
And numeracy.
Numeracy.
Mm.
It's a standardised test that's delivered in year 3, 5, 7 and 9 each year. And then the results are reported, each school have their results are reported on our website. It's publicly available. So it used to be a really good tool from my perspective as an educator, because it gave us an indication, a point in time indication about how an individual child was actually performing and how we were going in terms of the delivery of key skills in literacy and numeracy. But it's become a real problem in Australia when they started reporting each school's performance as a way of actually accountability,
Ranking them even.
yeah. So like a stick really
Treating
to,
it like a competition.
Exactly.
Like
So,
exams do.
and that's where the stresses actually come from, because
Yeah.
schools are operating in from a place of fear that if they don't actually improve their students' results, then they're going to be publicly shamed. So then that places the pressure on the students. So
I believe the competition also spreads down to students, and it makes them feel like if they're not going to achieve well, that they're not going to be treated well, nor are they going to be able to learn properly.
yeah,
And
it's quite a sad thing.
it's very
I've seen schools who ask students to stay home on the day of the test because it's going to impact their results, all sorts of things. Well, schools teaching for the test because they feel that that's the priority. So it very much is governments or political leaders saying this is what needs to happen in schools, and they don't even come from an educational background. It's quite scary. Yeah.
And that goes against when you're talking about the realm, when you took realms and you're talking about actual creative teaching, forces teachers to go back into traditional style of teaching, which may not be the best way of getting across. And I'm not against having literacy and numeracy as competencies. They're very, very important.
Yeah.
But as we've all mentioned, they can be done in a very different way.
And realms of thinking too, when it is not one or the other. It's not content or creative thinking. It's both and. Realms of thinking is a pedagogy or a way of teaching to deliver the content. It's not curriculum dependent. Any school anywhere can adopt realms of thinking. So they are delivering content and helping young people achieve academically, as well as develop those key skills and dispositions that they need for employment when they leave school. Yeah,
Absolutely. And Xavier, I haven't forgotten you, I guarantee it. And we'll give you a bit of time to get out your message, and we'll give you a hand, but you've been busily writing back and forward and throwing things everywhere. So would you like to share some of your thoughts, mate?
Yeah, so like for example, if you are like the smartest kid in like that subject, and if you are not there that day, so like I think you should get like either like one-on-one teaching for like the harder math work. Yes.
So you're talking about getting one-on-one teaching.
Yeah,
Would you say that could be online, or are you talking about at school?
online.
Online.
Yeah,
So you can get that more one-on-one. So
Yeah.
similar to what you were talking about virtual
Yeah.
reality, and similar to what you were talking about was individualizing a timetable. So that theme of individualizing is coming up, isn't it?
yeah, it is.
All the time. What's your next one? Was it to do with the Chevrolet that was down the car park?
no,
Just want to check that. It was a very big truck that we talked about on the way.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
because definitely talked about that a lot.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, that's right. And so we talked about using hands,
Yeah,
stuff like that in
yeah.
practical. Yep, your words.
Okay. And I'm like, if you're like 16, 17, and you have got a job, and like banking is is like key to like because like if I'm get paid and yeah, messed up.
No, you're doing well. Keep going.
Yeah, and like you don't know like how to like save up them money for like them fees.
Yeah.
For like your job. So like I think if we can add like someone banking to teachers that have got like very good experience, it could probably teach them how to like save up and like spend it on the things that are helpful in life.
Excellent. So you're talking about doing things that are realistic, like
Yeah.
talking about baking and cooking, which is a passion of yours.
No.
Not really, but I'm just checking. To do your example was about something practical, so
Yeah.
actually doing something that's meaningful in life,
Yeah.
which is really important.
Yeah, it is.
Well
And
done.
having the financial.
Well done.
support.
Yeah.
Yeah, and having the financial support to be
Yeah.
able to do that. So that's
Yeah.
talking about that real life education
Yeah, it is.
that's important.
Yeah.
So all of these things, we're talking about individualization, or being individual. And we talked about realms of thinking and a different pedagogy and how that all works. What do you think the future would look like? Because we will be a little bit older. We don't get too old.
Yeah.
We might be a little bit older, and then when we're relaxing and retired or whatever we're doing then, and you guys are actually running the country. What do you want to see in the future happening? What are the important issues for you to change the world that we should be concentrating in education?
Probably more focusing,
Nice and loud, go for it.
probably focusing more on not just focusing on how they, like for students that have learning disabilities like what I have,
Yep.
and when teachers just give me a big chunk of work and they don't break it down for students that what I have,
Yep.
and they just say do the work,
Yep.
and they don't break it for you and make it easier.
Yep.
It makes it stressful, not just for me, but for other students that have problems with their learning. And I feel like that some teachers don't focus on that. They just focus on them just getting like not actually focusing on them. They're just focusing on the work.
So are you saying breaking it down so it's more, as I said, I don't want to use the word individualized again, but that help.
It makes it easier for
everyone.
Yeah.
And you're also talking about concentrating on the person and the
Yeah.
character, not just the chunk of work.
Yeah. Because I find that some teachers are like that, and that some teachers don't focus on the student and what they find is difficult for them.
Okay. Or their passion as well.
Yeah.
More cricket. Just checking. More sport.
Yeah.
So that's a really good point.
Like for,
Hamish, it's
for
fantastic.
the students that like sport like me, I don't think teachers really show, they just want them to show like they work their like they just focus on the work, not their passion.
And I think that theme of holistic education is becoming really important. And that's what we're talking about, is developing the whole human being. So that Wellbeing Wednesday is, and I know it's a lot more than people could say, oh, it's a chill out day for the day. I know it's a lot more because Mr. Braden has talked about that in that. And I think that with something like that is balancing out both sides of it. But I'm sure that, Paul, you obviously wellbeing is very big.
It is, and interesting you say that, Hamish, because the learner profile that we're developing with Melbourne University at the moment, you can imagine it in three parts. It'll be an academic report because we have to report A to E against each curriculum area. But then the second part will be a report about how you're going with your skills and dispositions. And the third part will be about the development of your character traits, who you actually are.
Yeah.
It'll be a learner profile, so people like you, Hamish, can upload information or evidence of what you're doing at the moment. So if you do have a particular passion, basically what the learner profile will do is say to anybody, I am good at this. These are the things that I'm actually good at.
Yeah.
So then you can take that to an employer and say, if you're looking for this sort of person, this is me. I'm really good at all of these things.
Yeah.
So it kind of individualizes it there. I think you're talking a lot about individualization of education, and that's a really good point. And that's technology will probably take us down that way, but that's where I think the role of the teacher actually has to change, because the reality is, speaking crassly, your
Agreed.
parents aren't going to let you stay at home all day,
No.
particularly when you're at junior school, hoping that you're going to do your schoolwork.
Oh, yeah.
It's like Ready Player One. I don't know whether you've read that book or seen that movie.
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to happen, because they want to look after you, make sure you're safe. So they'll send you to school, but you might get the content delivered online from somebody, but you'll still have a teacher there caring for you. But the teacher's role will be more like a mentor, helping you develop character, responding to questions you actually have, support your mental health and your well-being. Because I think globally, we're heading to a really huge crisis with well-being.
Right.
We're certainly seeing that in Australia post-COVID at the moment. And we're also heading to a teacher shortage or crisis too, because we talk about individualising learning at the moment. And teachers in Australia are exhausted, and I'm sure they are in countries around the world, just because of what they had to do with COVID and the expectations placed on them. And now they're opting out because it's just too much. The impact on student wellbeing and their wellbeing is really impacting the way they deliver education and increasing their workload. So they don't have time really to develop individualised plans for every single student. So it's kind of like the system is, as we know, it's not working.
Yeah, that's right. And education's got to be fun, and it's got to be engaging, and it's got to be exactly about life, about looking at your interest. And we talked about, Paul's touched on that then, strength-based. So everybody has strength-based, whether you are whatever culture you are, if you think that you have a disability or no disability or drive or whatever it may be, you have all strengths and you can achieve anything. But having that balance of that whole profile is really important. Now, you talked about the strength of before, Keely, about you voiced up changing a whole timetable and trying to change things at your school. Right? Are you happy with that, or would you like to even go further?
I do like this idea. I do see the issue with like building relationships and things like that. Like if you're not at school, how are you supposed to communicate with others and build those connections that you do every day with the students around you? I still think the idea is good.
Yeah, excellent.
Bias.
Yeah, that's okay.
But yeah, as a student, I've spoken to other students as well in my grade, lower grades. And they were like, yeah, I'd rather like be able to choose my own kind of pathway and just have a bit more freedom in where I'd like to take myself with schooling.
Keely, it's interesting. Our vision for 2028 is that when you reach a certain standard with your basic skills like literacy and numeracy, then you get to choose courses and build your timetable like you would at a university.
Yeah.
So the reality, like we've challenged the notion of grade levels. Why is it that we organise schools based on how old you are, when in fact you might be in year 7, but really be cracking at mathematics and be capable of doing, a higher level of maths. So why don't you pick that course and we build the timetable around your needs?
Yeah.
It's an enormous challenge though, because school is so fixated in this block of time, 9 to 3, and how do you crack that? Melbourne Girls Grammar School in Victoria have done some really great work around timetabling and restructuring it. So wellbeing is a central part of that too. And I'm sort of sure your principal's been aware of that too, because it's a tough challenge, and all credit to your school for doing what you've done.
And I can guarantee you that at Mansell, you're going to see those changes in the next couple of years. And
Yeah.
what you boys are going to see, it's going to be totally unbend that, and it will be based on individualised, exactly where we are at, and then personalising your journey for where you want to go. Dale, you've been biting the bit to say something. So let's hand over to Dale.
Well, interestingly enough, on the 2 points that have just been made about individualization and then also looking at more of a stage approach as opposed to age. So where our school is currently heading is we have a foundation phase where students develop literacy and numeracy, and then they can transition up to the next stage, which is exploration phase. And it's at that point where they get to choose a pathway that's not quite in line with traditional, unless that's something that they're really interested in. So we have to, through Australian curriculum, meet math, science, English, humanities, like we have mandated times to study those things. But we pitch to our teachers to write instead courses. So we have those traditional subjects, but courses as well. So we have some that are constructions of solar cars and some that are real estate and some that are, to do with climate change and things like that. So, and the idea is we map our Australian curriculum to those contexts as opposed to using the context and then running subjects through that. So our principal, Doug Braden's super passionate about individualization of student pathways. And part of that Wednesday program that we have, the intent is the learning coach will actually meet individually with students to plan those individual pathways. And hopefully we get outcomes for students that are a little more engaging.
It was good that you mentioned that because we didn't, there's a learning coach.
Yes.
So use those words. Can you tell us a little bit about what the learning coach means?
So the intent of the learning coach is to meet with students. Part of it is about their academic progress. The idea also is we help them to develop skills that we think are important. So time management, organization. We check in on the well-being of students and we have data systems to track those. So they can reach out for assistance in the event they want to talk to someone. But yeah, we're really focusing on like the whole of the student as opposed to just academic well-being because we understand, well-being is pretty much the most important thing.
Yeah, fantastic.
It's fascinating. Can I just say, Dale, while we have governments mandating what we should do and a lot of schools doing the traditional form of education, there are a lot of schools who are really doing really great things, Data Hovey down at Albury, he's a Catholic school there. He did similar things and got staff to write courses and deliver them to students. Yeah, a lot of educators are doing some really great work because we're passionate about young people.
And part of what we did as the courses is the teachers actually pitched them to a group of students. So it isn't actually the teachers who decided what was going to get up. It was a group of students who decided. So, yeah.
I'm just wondering, Janine Rosser here from Independent Schools Queensland, and I just wondered if I could explore a conversation with you that goes a bit broader than, and you've all touched on it, a bit broader than just that we're schools about creating the young people for the workforce of the future. In Australia, we've had a very strong discourse around the Productivity Commission driving this need for workers. And really, our schools across the independent sector are growing the whole child. They're growing the person of character, the person for the community as well, and for the global community. And so students, I heard on the radio this morning an article about some year 12 students that were supposed to be attending their muck-up day today, but instead they were filling sandbags to stop the flooding. And in the case of Plainlands, for our viewers outside the local area, about 10, 11 years ago, your community copped a terrible flood. So it's close to our hearts that we know what happens when a country town gets flooded. And these young people were saying how proud they were to be a part of the community. And I'm just wondering, as we move into increasing city movements, people coming into cities and less rural communities, how do schools prepare our young people to be the citizens of the community? How do we help you to be contributors to community?
Would one of you like to answer that about service and community? I saw that same article on television last night down in Victoria where the girls, I think it was St Joseph's,
A Catholic school,
in Melbourne. Service, so looking after other people and then thinking about others first.
Helping.
Yeah, I think that's really good for those people to not just think about the community as well, and thinking that they want to, with the flooding, that they want to do something about it. And so I think that's pretty good. So
how do we build people to have that as part of their education and part of their fabric?
Probably people telling them or help them to that they should just like
programs that should help them do that.
Yeah, like people programs help them with community.
Being involved in the community. I know that one of our staff members was yesterday talking about horticulture and doing agri-foods. And so they've set up a partnership. I'm not sure whether you know that, but they've set up a partnership with Lone Pine Koala Sanctuary down the road.
I think it's Sophie from year 11, 12.
You got it.
Yeah.
And they're now redoing up the lands at the front of the Lone Pine
Oh, yeah,
Sanctuary,
true, yeah.
Sanctuary, and linking that to agri-foods courses as well as horticulture, and actually building the area because they haven't got time down there, which actually then creates a presentation for the koala sanctuary for people to actually attend and go to. So I think we're actually talking about Costa out of the Gardening Australia coming in with a talk about it. On television was a bit of fun. Same sort of beard as yours there, Dale, but which is good. Gwen, were you going to say something?
I was sort of going to discuss the whole community thing. I believe that schools that have a positive community relationship, like how with Wednesday, we get involved with other members of the grade through our learning coach. I believe that by showing positive community values from teachers to students through education, getting people to work together. They're planning on having our year 12s connect with our year 7s next year in order to help them introduce to the school, show them what it means to be a member of Faith Lutheran College. I believe that spreads out into the wider community.
It does.
And having partnerships with other schools, I believe also spreads these values, and it helps people to feel part of like everything.
Yeah, perfect. And on the way in, Hamish, you mentioned about, and remind you about one of your passions. We talked about what you want to do after school. I know it's a long way away,
Yeah.
but you talked about others and how well we work with others and working in childcare. Remember that?
Yeah.
You want to talk a little bit mention about how that was with younger people and what school could look like
Yeah,
that.
like I was saying that find that younger kids when so it's good to influence them, like influence them with not just in general with helping them with things that they might not understand and
Help them going forward.
Yeah.
So older students in the school work with younger students in the school, sort of like a house system. I know Paul and I have seen house systems, quite a lot of it, but you're balancing that in the service as you actually do that. It's really important. Okay.
It's an interesting question, Janine, because it all comes back to what makes us human, really, at the end of the day, isn't it? Like, what does it mean to be a human? And the reality is, to be a human, we crave relationships, and to get a strong sense of purpose, we crave the opportunity to make a difference to other people's lives, to improve their lives. So if that's
and then we get that
satisfaction. It's interesting. It takes a long time to learn that's not all about me. It's actually about the difference I can actually make. So the reality is, to be genuinely human, you can't deliver an education when you're sitting at home by yourself, because you're not building those relationships. You haven't got somebody older mentoring you and looking up to see where to go. You haven't got an example or a role model to see what is life actually all about. In actual fact, life's all about being in relationship with each other and making a difference, contributing to communities where we all live and work. So really, that's what education's got to be more focused on.
Well, one of the things at Mansfield College is connecting. And there's three parts of that, but the connections are really important. That's exactly what it is. Humans innately have to be connected to somebody else. That is part of a social being. No.
When we're not, we wilt. And that's been shown. One of the most cruel things somebody can do to another person is put them into solitary confinement. And there's research coming out now saying that is the worst thing you can do to somebody, to confine them by themselves. It just basically destroys their humanity.
Correct.
So we really need to live in community with each other and learn how to live in community with each other. And unfortunately, the internet, one of its negatives is that it's taken us away from that community connection, given us virtual connections, but not real connections.
Peter, Paul, speaking of connections, we have a question from the audience. I wonder if I can read that question out now.
Absolutely.
So a member of our audience on YouTube is saying, offering multiple pathways for school sounds great, but we wonder, how can schools balance government mandates and staffing for diverse pathways in a secondary school? How can that happen in real life in schools?
Can I just make a, can I?
Go for it.
So at St. Paul's School, we've developed what we call 3 pathways of learning. The traditional academic pathway, which in a sense is mandated by the government, we have to deliver the curriculum. And an academic pathway looks like a student getting an ATAR. An ATAR is the Australian Tertiary's admission ranking, so that gets them entry to university. A vocational pathway, which basically all our schools do, where they're learning or looking at a trade and they're getting qualifications in that area. But we've also developed an entrepreneurial pathway. And the reality is, or the provocation or the line that we share is that why is it the young people become entrepreneurs in spite of their education? Why can't they become entrepreneurs because of their education? So we opened the Centre for Innovators and Entrepreneurs about 5-6 years ago. So young people who have a business idea can actually go and be mentored by somebody in the corporate world to help their business idea come to reality.
Reality. Thanks, Paul.
I guess if I could just answer that question as well. Lee and I work with the 230 member schools in our sector to support them with compliance. And it would be reasonable to say that it is a huge impost on our schools, and that the regulations and the requirements of schools don't catch up. So schools are always pushing ahead with innovation, and we're trying to get the relevant legislation to catch up to it.
That's right.
And it is a real tension,
That's right.
absolute tension.
That's right.
But lots of schools are pretty sneaky and they're actually
Yeah,
doing great
and
work.
doing great, and they're still compliant. They're all
Yeah,
still
that's
compliant.
right. So you can do
But
it.
it is possible. It is hard.
That's right, and you can make them compliant, have the individualisation, the wellbeing components and everything else. In Australia, we've got to cover literacy and numeracy, so English, mathematics, science and the humanities. We have to cover those, but they can also, as you were talking about before, totally be interwoven into those capabilities creatively into the curriculum. So that's how we can move those mandates. We still have in Australia very strict requirements that we go through cyclical reviews, that we must do certain hours of certain things, but how they, as you said, they can be done in a creative way and how they are supposed to be accounted for.
I think it comes back to, do you want to be a slave to the system, or do you want to create the future and lead?
Correct.
And really,
Yeah.
that's
100%.
therein lies the challenge. So
Yeah.
I would encourage educators to have the courage to lead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've got schools that are represented here and all over Australia that are doing that and really moving towards that. Our challenge is to put that provocation out to the rest of the world. Will you be able to do that as well and take away the rankings where everybody sits and actually have a look at the outputs that we are having for our students in the future? And girls, have you got anything you'd like to add? I know we're getting nearly the time there, but I know you're busy biting away. Anything else?
I just want to elaborate on this idea that you had about bringing the outside life skills into school.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, Xavier's
I know.
idea.
A lot of kids, a lot of my grade actually, you hear these words like tax and things like that, and you're like, well, I know how to find the equation of this particular graph, but how do I do that? Like, what does that mean?
Mhm.
And obviously that's something that comes into a lot in adulthood and things like that. And I just feel like skills like that should be implemented.
Life skills. Interesting. I was having a conversation with a staff member at 4 o'clock yesterday afternoon exactly about that. And the tax was one of them, as well as, looking after yourself on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And things that you're not taught at school, which is really important. Do you guys all know how to do the washing?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, very good. Xavier. Straight up.
That and cooking.
So, Amy, washing?
Maybe.
Maybe. Girls?
Yeah.
Okay, so, but it should be everybody, shouldn't it? Cooking?
Tacos.
You like cooking? Okay.
Slowly.
Yeah,
Uh,
tacos.
2-minute noodles.
Yeah.
Salads or a meal of spaghetti. That's.
Yeah, there illustrates another problem, really. It's like what the schools actually what are they responsible for, and what the parents are responsible for.
That's correct.
Unfortunately, in Australia, our values and our landscape has changed considerably over the last 10 years, and more responsibilities placed on schools that really it should be the responsibility of families.
Absolutely.
Families should be working in partnership with schools, not just dumping their children at the school, hoping that they'll do everything for them.
And that's the whole, we haven't mentioned that, but that's so true. The partnership between the parents, the families, the student and the school are paramount, all working together as one. It can't be one or the other. So it's everybody together, isn't it?
And Gabrielle, I'd be really interested, the presentation that your Simone, the lovely Simone did for us last week, She was sitting in her car in a petrol station in Buenos Aires, Zooming to teachers in Brisbane. And it was like we were just in the room together with her. And now here we've heard our young people here talking about tacos and 2-minute noodles. It's such a cosmopolitan, globalized world, isn't it?
It is.
And, you know, I'm sure that your viewers to this session today would resonate with many of the things that have been spoken about, similar all around the world.
Yeah, and it's the wonder of technology and what we lived through in the pandemic that allowed us to realize that there are indeed no frontiers, that we can communicate, that we can exchange, that we can learn from each other and enjoy each other's companies by connecting in this way. So yeah, thanks everybody. It's been a wonderful segment. We will be publishing this online, both on YouTube and on our page, and we'll be disseminating it widely so that everybody can learn from your testimonials. So thanks to the students, thanks to our educators in the panel. I don't know, Peter, if there's anything else you'd like to say before we wrap it up.
I'd just really like to thank Independent Schools Queensland for hosting and setting it up today. Thank you, Janine. Thank you, Lee. And thank you to your team. It was really well. Thank you so much, Paul, for coming in your busy time and recovering from COVID. It's really important. Thank you to all 4 of you for your wonderful input. And hopefully we're going to make that little bit of difference across the world. And thank you, Gabrielle, for setting this all up. So thank you very much.
Yeah. Well done.